Alright, we're going to do a little 5-in-1 today, and figured we'd get started with a test cut here. We always want to test these on all 5 settings to make sure that the hollow is placed properly. If you get the hollow too far back, then it'll cut on the first settings where the cutter is closer to the front, but then it won't cut as you bring that cutter back. See what I'm saying there? The cutter comes back, and if the hollow is propagated too far towards the front, then when it gets to the back settings, it won't cut right here in the middle. So let's get a look at this thing on a test cut. If it won't cut on the first setting, it isn't going to cut on any of them. And let's take a look what we got here. It's cutting some, but you see right there where it's binding up. It doesn't want to go through that material. A couple of things can happen there on this. It could be that the blade's just dull. This is the way the groomer handed it to me. But the other situation that I come across from time to time, and you come across this on 8.5 blades as well, is that there is not enough spring tension between the cutter and the comb. So when you try to get into a little deeper into material, which is something that the groomer will run across every now and again too, if they're trying to get into a mat, or they get into a mat or something where they've got they need some more spring tension between these two pieces. So I'll go over how we go about adding a little bit of spring tension. If we get too much, then the blade will just get hot and they won't be able to use it properly. But I can tell you by moving this back and forth, I can feel that it doesn't have a whole lot of spring tension. That doesn't mean to say that it's not dull as well, but I'll show you the process I go by, or I use to add just a bit of spring tension to where I feel that I've got an adequate amount, and that's not going to be the problem with the clip blade itself. So let me get this thing up on a stand, and I'll go through that procedure with you. I've got my little goofy phone mount set up in the corner of my clipper blade machine, so I obviously can't use it right now, but a good spot to hang the camera up for me to give you an idea of my spring tensioning procedure here. Alright, I think that'll work. Let's try it. I think you can see. Let's see. I'm referencing my frame. Okay, alright. So what we'll do is we'll start by just, of course, yanking this thing apart. As well, you know, these things are real bad about, let me put it back together. These things are real bad about getting gunk in between the cutter and comb. And if the hair follicle, the spent hair follicles build up in between these two blades here, it won't cut either, because what happens is that as it does that, it'll mechanically push the teeth of the comb off of the cutter if it gets a bunch of junk built up in there. Something that you can tell your groomers to help them out. The very first thing they need to try, if they have a 5-in-1 blade that stops working all of a sudden on them, take it off the deal, and you just push down with your air compressor. Shut up. All right, tell them to take it off with their clippers, and then you just physically use your thumb to press and pull back right here. I'll see if I can. Let me see if that's showing up on camera. Yeah, you can see it. That's not focusing. If I push down with my thumb, you see that lift up. So you just tell them to remove or pull the cutter back from the comb like that, and just take a business card. Leave them a business card. Ha ha ha. See, you always have that. Some of you always have to have the special business card made special. Anyway, and then you just run your business card in between there, and it'll remove any hair or any junk that's built up in there that may be causing the cutter to no longer touch the comb. So that's a good little tip to give to your groomers, and it'll save their butt every once and again, and they'll always have with your business cards. Anyway, all right, so let's get this thing apart. Let's take a look at what we're going to do to make sure that we have the proper amount of spring tension. This blade's very, very worn, so it's definitely dull, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what we're going to do is, obviously, we're going to remove the cutter from the. I like to just take a pick and get it between there, or actually not a pick, that one sucks. I've got a little bitty flathead screwdriver that I use. Get it between there, just gonna pop that little leg out of there, if you will, the spring, and then it'll come apart for you. Let's see. Yeah, man, this cutter's, yeah, it's toast. I mean, it's sharpenable. It's not that worn, but definitely going to be dull. Going to need to be brought up on it. All right, so let's go about tensioning the spring here, adding a bit of tension. Here's what I do. I take my little Wolf. I got this from Wolf Pinkstone. I got this when I originally ordered my my task machine. I think they send this out as part of the deal there, but this is what I use. You could use, I've heard people say they use a paint stick. I've heard people, all kinds of stuff, whatever. This is what I use, and if you got something that's about the same size as this, all I'm doing is putting that underneath the front legs of the spring and then pop it into place on that plastic carrier. And if you see that there, you can see that it's holding these two legs out, but it's holding them out in an exact same spot, you know, in relation to the plastic. And that's important because you don't want to have one of these bent a little more than the other, because if you do, the cutter will actually sit crooked on top of the comb when you reassemble it. So it's important to bend these two pieces in the exact same manner, or manipulate them, if you will. What I do is I take that, pop it in there, and then from the top side you can see the top of the spring there, it's fulcrum where it sticks up. I just take these funky looking pliers that I've got here. You can use a regular set of pliers, but these just kind of really hit right on the spot right there. And I'm just going to bend that down into the housing and depress that a little bit. All the way, I depress it all the way till it hits the plastic housing. Now it's not going to bend it that much because it's going to spring and return, but it does add just a little bit. I think you can see that happen. It does add just a little bit of a forward bend to this, down towards the cutter a bit, and it's also, because of the way I've got it set in the stone there, it's going to be even. It's going to be an even, and what that does is when I reassemble it, it's going to have a little bit more downforce on the cutter. So I think that's about all I got to cover on that portion. I'll set the camera back at a different spot, and we'll get on the plate, and we'll get these two sharpened up and reassembled, cleaned up, reassembled, all that kind of good stuff. And then we'll get to the test material again, and we'll see what it does after sharpening versus what it did before. It would cut some of the thin wispies off the top, but when you really got into some material, it didn't want to cut. So judging by the, like I say, by the square here, it does need to be sharpened. We handle the spring tension issue, and then we'll get it back together and see how we do.